Factoring using a greatest common factor. Factors are numbers you multiply together to get another number. For example, 2 times 3 is 6. So you would say 2 and 3 are factors of 6. If I wanted to list all of the factors of 12, 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 6 would be 12. And then 3 times 4 would be 12. So all of these numbers are factors of 12. If I were to list the factors of 30, that's 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. So all of these numbers are factors of 30. If you were to compare 12 and 30, you would be able to list common factors. Common factors are factors that 2 or more numbers share. So if I'm looking at common factors, 1 is a common factor, 2 is a common factor, 3 is a common factor, 4 would not be, 6, yes, would be, so 6 is a common factor, and 12 would not be, nor would 5, 10, 15, or 30. So all of the common factors are these 4 right here. We are looking for a greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor is the largest factor that 2 or more numbers share. In this case, between 12 and 30, it would be 6. It's essentially like asking, what is the largest number that both of these are divisible by? That's how I think of it. So if we're taking a look at part 2, it says finding a GCF of numbers and monomials. So you can find GCFs with constants, which are your numbers, and variables as well. So if I'm thinking about the GCF for 6x squared and 5x squared, the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. The factors of 5 are just 1 and 5. So the greatest common factor for the numbers is just going to be 1. Now for the variables, x squared is 2x's, x squared is 2x's. So how many pairs can I make is kind of how you think about it. 1 pair, 2 pairs. So I can pull out 2x's, or that would be x squared. Another way to think about it is with variables, you pull out the lowest power. For example, if I'm looking here, if I ask myself, and you can always list out all the factors if you want, like 1, 15, 3 and 5, 1, 20, 2, 10, 4, 5. So you can always list out all the factors, or just ask yourself, what is the biggest number that both 15 and 20 are both divisible by? I think of 5 right away. And then for the variables, you have 3 y's here and 1 y here. So you can only pull out 1 y, because after you pull out 1 y, you're out of y's here and you have 2 left over here. Or think of it, it's always just the lowest power. So y is the lowest power. So we're just going to pull that out. Looking here, GCF, between 4 and 5, we have 1, 4, 2, 2, 1, 5. So the GCF would just be 1. Now the variables, this is an x squared, so I have 2 x's. This is a y cubed, so I have 3 y's. They are different variables, so you cannot pull out a GCF with those variables. For number 4, the GCF, keep in mind you want to ask yourself, what is the biggest number they're both divisible by? So 8 and 28 are both divisible by 2, yes, but there is a bigger number that I can think of, and that is 4. Again, if it helps to write out 1, 8, 2, 4, 1, 28, 2, 14, 4, 7, and then look at it, you can. In regards to the variables, this has 2 A's, this one has none, so you can't make any pairs, or the lowest power would be none, so there's nothing I can pull out for A. Taking a look at part 3, factoring by pulling out the GCF. Step 1, find the GCF, and we're going to pull that out, and step 2, divide each term by the GCF. So the format would be a GCF out front, and then in parentheses, you'll have whatever left over. For example, if I look here, GCF, I have to look at all 3 terms this time and ask myself, I'm going to look at the constants first, 15, 6, and 21. Is there a number that these are all divisible by other than 1? I can think of 3, so that should be the biggest number there. Now they do all have a variable x, which means I can pull out a variable, but I can only pull out the lowest power. So I can pull out an x to the first power. So to factor by pulling out a GCF, you should always write your GCF out front, and then inside of parentheses, you're going to put what remains after you divide each term by the GCF. So dividing each term by 3x. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. X cubed divided by x is x squared. That's your properties of exponents. When you divide, you subtract. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. X squared divided by x is x. 21 divided by 3 is 7, and then the x's, they cancel. So you just have 7. And this is your answer. You have factored by pulling out a GCF of 3x. Let's do it some more. So taking a look at part 3, we have number 5. It says factor each polynomial. For factoring, I'm going to pull out a GCF. 2 and 6 are both divisible by 2. And they both have a variable, so I can pull out the lowest power, x. So my GCF is 2x. If I divide each term by 2x, what I'm left with is 4 divided by 2 is 2. X squared divided by x is x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X divided by x, they cancel, so that's gone. So this is my final answer here. Let's do it again. The GCF here, 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3. Only one term has an x, so I can't pull one out. So I just can pull out a 3. If I divide each of these by 3, 3x divided by 3 is 1x. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. Over here, the GCF between all three terms, 10, 2, and 5, their only common factor is 1. And then they don't all have the variable n, so I can't pull that out. If your GCF is ever 1, it does not help to pull out a GCF. You won't be able to factor by pulling out a GCF, so your answer is just whatever you started off with. So GCF of 1 doesn't do anything for us. The GCF here, though, 9, 18, and 6, I can think that they're all divisible by 3. And then they do all have h's. The lowest power is squared, so I'm going to pull out an h squared. In parentheses, I'm going to put what remains after I pull out that 3h squared. So remember, it's division. 9 divided by 3 is 3. H to the 8th divided by h squared is h to the 6th. 18 divided by 3 is 6. H cubed divided by h squared is h. And then negative 6 divided by 3 is a negative 2. H squared over h squared, they cancel. So that would be the final answer right there. Next, we have some try problems. It says find the GCF, where GCF stands for greatest common factor. So you're only identifying the GCF here. You're looking and saying, okay, what are all of these divisible by? They're all divisible by 1, 2, and 4. So the biggest number is 4. They all have the variable x. Pull out the lowest power, 4x. Both of these terms are divisible by 5. They both have a v, so pull out the lowest power, v cubed. Both of these are divisible by 3. You can't pull out a variable. All three of these are divisible by 2. They all three have the variable b, so I can pull out the lowest power, so 2b. That's it. You just wanted the greatest common factor. But here, I tell you to factor. So that's where you're going to pull out the GCF and then write what remains. So the GCF here, 3, 12, and 15 are all divisible by 3. They all have an x, so I pull out the lowest power. So I'm factoring. I'm putting that GCF out front. It's very important we include that. And now I'm going to divide each term by that 3x. Remember, that's how you get what's inside of the parentheses. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. X cubed divided by x is x squared. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. X squared divided by x is x. And then 15 divided by 3 is 5. The x's cancel. So you could put the 1 there. You could have also just left off the 1, just so you know. It's personal preference, whichever one you want to do. Technically, this is more simplified. GCF here. Both of these are divisible by 1, 2, and 4. You always want to pick the biggest common factor. So we're going to do 4 and then x. So 4x, if I divide each of these by 4x, I'm writing inside of the parentheses what remains. So that gives me 2x minus, and then 12 divided by 4 is 3. The x's cancel. So that's my answer right there. Here, GCF, both divisible by 5. Pull out the lowest power since they both had a d variable. Divide each by 5d. If it helps to write it, go for it. If not, leave it off. The 5's cancel to 1, and then d cubed divided by d is d squared, plus 10 divided by 5 is 2, and the d's cancel. So that would be my factored form. Last one, GCF for these. They're all divisible by 1, 3, and 6. Always pull out the greatest common factor, so I'm going to pull out the 6. And then m, they all have an m, pull out the lowest power, so 6m. In parentheses, I'm going to put what remains after I divide each term by 6m. So it gives me m squared minus 2m minus 4.